All right, let's do a round of applause. If you are a current Girls Club member, give it up for them. Raise your hands. Who are you? Raise your hands. Yes. All right, round of applause for alumni of the Lower East Side Girls Club. Raise your hands. Who are you? Staff from the Lower East Side Girls Club. Give it up for them. Yeah. New friends, old friends of the Lower East Side Girls Club. That's you guys. You're new friends. Yeah. All right. My name's Erikka. I've been with the Lower East Side Girls Club for 10 years. It's my birthday tomorrow, so we're having and the Lower East Side Girls Club was founded in 1996, so almost 30 years ago, to provide free programming to young women and girls on the Lower East Side and their families, and we're so happy to be here today. I want to thank the amazing ESSX team, Laura, Zero, Naveed, the entire staff here, for throwing this amazing party. We are celebrating, what month are we celebrating? But every month is... Could we say it louder, please? Every month is? Yes, it is. So we want to thank you all so much for supporting us. Come visit us. We're on 8th Street and Avenue D. You can check out our work at girlsclub.org. Follow us at Girls Club NY and support all these amazing young people here today. Are you ready for the panel? Are you ready for the panel? All right, let's do it. I'm going to pass it to Laura. Thank you all so much.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Thank you for coming. We're really excited to introduce our panelists today. Each of these women represent a really big part of not just ESSX, but a big part of my personal life. I've had the luxury of working with many of them, and also in my past lives, in my past jobs, and also in my current job. So I'm really excited to introduce to you Aria Hughes. Aria Hughes is, actually she's a very old friend of mine. We worked together at Complex many moons ago. Doesn't feel like it though. I feel like we still work together. But Aria is the editor-in-chief of Complex. Not only is she the editor-in-chief of Complex, she's the first female editor-in-chief of Complex magazine. She has been championing women and female artists and creatives in all of her editorials, her interviews, and really just getting that message out there of all the women that work behind streetwear and in creative industries. Thank you, Aria. So Aria's gonna be narrating our panel today. And then our next panelist is Aicha. Hi. Right here. So I think Aicha needs no introduction. She was a Girls Club alumni. And we've just had the pleasure of getting to know her, and we're really excited for her to join our group at ESSX and also be part of this panel. She comes with, she represents so many things that we love about a young female. She's not only an alumni from the Girls Club, but she works in the media field as well, just like Aria. So she works with Good Day New York, working along and co-producing segments for different celebrities, talent. So she's just right in there with us. And don't think that we're not going to try to get your business after. Our next panelist is Elyse. Elyse Fox is someone I met also many moons ago, but Elyse Fox represents something really special. She started an organization called Sad Girls Club. What year did you start it? In 2017. And in this organization, she has been providing access to mental health for females across many different countries, many different continents, and just continuing to push that along. As you met Shania before, who did the sound bath, which was amazing. Thank you. And then our final panelist is Nessa. Thank you, Nessa. So Nessa is not only a client of the store, but she's also a friend of the store. Nessa is a radio personality and the host of Hot 97 as well as MTV. She's also a social activist, and she works a lot in different communities and marginalized communities, always giving back, raising awareness, and just continues to have that conversation and just make that open conversation. So these are our panelists. Thank you guys. Thank you for coming. And I don't know which microphone I have.
Do I have the right mic?
Is that one on?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Laura, for those great introductions. So whenever I do these panels, I just want to make it seem like I'm in my living room chatting with friends. So let's just relax, have a conversation. But we're going to be talking a lot about just being a woman, which is obviously an amazing, beautiful thing. But we also know that comes with challenges. So it's going to be positive, but enlightening, inspiring, I hope. Here we go. So Nessa. So we all know that radio is a male-dominated space and hip-hop is a male-dominated space. You know, how have you navigated that, and how have you maybe overcome the challenges with that space?
Yeah, radio in general is very male-dominated. And I just think for myself, I never allowed myself to talk myself out of any situation, right? I didn't really focus on the things I didn't have. I really just focused on the things I do have. And you know, maybe I was delusional, but I just truly always believed that my work would speak for itself. And even when it did, at times that didn't matter. And that's kind of how life goes. And it's not just in radio. For really, I think everybody who's here today or a loved one has experienced where you feel like, I know I got it. I've been working so hard, and when am I going to get my shot? And I think for me, regardless of how male-dominated my industry is, I just kept my eyes on the prize. And I made sure any opportunity that opened up, it could be, you know, I started off as an intern in radio, and I just remember taking any opportunity. You want coffee? I'm there. You want me to grab your bag of whatever? I'm there. There was nothing that I just thought I was above, and it paid off for me. And regardless of the hurdles, because those hurdles exist, it is real, I just made sure my work was undeniable. I had great energy, and I knew I had to always be ready to go. Meaning, when that opportunity presented itself, I had, you know, the bars to rise to the occasion. And I think for me, it didn't matter, you know, who was around, what barriers I was faced with. That was, you know, 20 years in the game now, that's been the focus. And for me, I saw a lot of women that really helped foster me when I got to TV at MTV, but in radio, no, not at all. And I'm very thankful for the great women that I met through TV, especially Jessica Zalkine, who really helped me when she was at MTV, part of Viacom at that time. But, you know, before that, radio, mm-mm. And I don't think it's because, how do I say this? I don't think it's because they didn't want to help me. There just weren't enough, right? So the positions were primarily occupied by men. So it wasn't that women weren't trying to look out for me, but there were instances that when I did come across a woman within radio, they weren't as warm to me because sadly there's a scarcity mentality that I'm gonna be the only woman in this position, and I'm gonna be the one that gatekeeps, and I'm gonna be the one, and we don't have to do that, you know? So I think that's how I've handled it. And so I've made it a point in my career to try to foster talent and open doors. And that started early on in my career. Long before I came to New York to Hot 97, I had an internship program, and just to see everybody grow in their own ways. And then 10 years ago when I came to Hot 97, I made it a conscious effort to try to help young women, you know, get that guidance that I never got, which is the partnership that I've had with the Girls Club for a long time. So it's so crazy to look out in the audience and to see so many of my interns here and just so many great, amazing women that, you know, gave not just, you know, me support, but my husband, Colin Kaepernick, and our organization, Know Your Rights Camp, so much love and support. So, you know, it's a beautiful moment right here. And Aicha sitting here, this was my intern, and it's crazy, and she's leading the way, you guys. I'm so proud of her, and it's like a full circle moment for sure.
That's great advice, to just focus on what you can control. For sure, that's great advice. And change what you didn't have. I love that.
That's right.
Yeah. Elyse. So I know Elyse, but I had to research her, so I found out more about her trajectory. And so in 2017, you released this documentary, Conversations with Friends.
Yes.
And it was a very revealing documentary about your depression. And then you did this amazing thing of forming the Sad Girls Club. But it was a big shift to go from being a creative producer and working to starting a nonprofit, essentially. So how did you get the courage to do that?
I still ask myself that. But I would say when I released my film, and I would say this, as a filmmaker, you want your films to start a conversation. You want it to create some kind of groundswell in some way. So when I released that film, it was the first time I ever was vulnerable on film. I did some modeling before, but you're playing a character essentially. Mm-hmm. But with my own film and speaking about my own story, I was shook. I was like, I don't know if anybody's gonna resonate. People are gonna hate me. They're gonna think I'm weird. But when I got the response that I received, I was like, I have to do more. I was receiving DMs from girls in Africa saying, this sounds like my story. I want to talk to my family. Yeah. I'm a child of immigrants. How do I tell my parents that? My mom just says, pray about it. How do I go about this conversation? And I had to tell myself I could either, let these conversations just fizzle out or create something to pursue something better. Mm-hmm. And as I was looking for resources to give to these young women, I didn't find much, not many that would fulfill young women who look like me, or they just weren't as culturally relevant. They weren't cool. They felt really stale, and they felt very medicinal. Mm-hmm. So I was like, let me create the coolest wellness club that I can create through Sad Girls Club, and I want to be in spaces that they interact with media, interact with fashion, interact with beauty, just to make sure that it's a normalized conversation. But it was very, very difficult to start in the beginning. And I would say the courage came from young women just like the Lower East Side Girls Club. I love hearing you all, stories from you, your generation. That's what motivates me to keep going, because I don't want girls to not have anything to look up to or not have any resources to sustain their mental health, whether you're doing it by yourself or with a friend. I want to be able to provide that for you. So the younger me's, the me that was looking in the mirror saying why doesn't anybody realize I'm depressed or I'm anxious or I'm suicidal, all these things, I don't want anyone else to feel the way I felt. So when I look in the mirror or I look out in the crowd and I see you all, that's what motivates me and keeps me going and keeps me just wanting to provide everything that we do at Sad Girls Club.
That's so powerful. Also, Sad Girls Club social. Oh my gosh.
At Sad
amazing.
Girls Club.
Aicha, the fan favorite. I'm sure for great reason. So you are now a production assistant at Good Day New York. I'm curious, how did you find your path? How did you know that you wanted to be in media and journalism?
So I actually started back at Girls Club. Kelly's sitting right there, but I started with her where Radio Girl lives. And we basically, I remember she just was like, Aicha, do you want to come sit in? There's a group from Chicago coming in, just ask questions. And I'm like, okay. And coming from a family of immigrants, my mom always wanted me to be a doctor. I'm pretty sure a lot of our parents wanted us to be a doctor, lawyer, one of those that make the most money. So I just remember going into Girls Club, sitting in that class, and I was literally, it was so natural with me just asking questions. And Kelly was like, have you done this before? And I'm like, no. And she was like, you're so good. Aww, and yeah. It didn't take me, I didn't realize that until, again, she said, you should do Nessa's internship program at Hot 97. And I love music, I love hip hop. So I actually did it. It was once every Friday. And I remember all of our classes till this day with Katrina, who's also here today. She taught us how to use hi Katrina. She taught us how to use Vox Pro. She taught us how to use like how to do the interview style, and then we'll go sit in with Nessa because she was on air, and she'll give us like the best advice ever. You know, I still remember some of them to this day. But basically, it wasn't until I was sitting in that environment where I was like, I don't have to be a doctor like my mom wants. And every time people ask me, why do you want to be a doctor? I will always say, because my mom wants me to. And they would be like, okay, well, find your passion. So I really expressed myself through that environment. And so I just went to Syracuse University, just undeclared. And it's so funny because I always wanted to go to Syracuse, but I never knew why. And so when I found out about their top program, which is the journalism program, I was like, it's a sign like I have to get in. But come to find out, you need like a 3.9 GPA, and I had like a 3.7. So every time that I would apply, I would get declined. And I remember my sophomore year, I applied for the third time, and then I finally got in based on, you know, it was GPA top ranking. So I got in, I did the classes. I was doing radio, being inspired by Nessa. I did hip hop radio out there. I helped their social media. And then once I graduated, I mean, it was difficult to find something in the market because everybody is trying to find that first job. But I just remember networking a lot, and that's what I learned at Girls Club, which is to network. And we always did panels like this, and I was always inspired by conversations like these. So I was like, I'm gonna try my best to get in wherever I can, and that's where I got the trainee program for Good Day. And I just remember it being such a difficult position because I was working at this entertainment law firm, and they required you to stay there for 2 years. Oh, wow. And I only stood there, I was there for 4 months after I got the position, and I felt so bad. I didn't want to, you know, I wanted to be professional about it, but I knew this was my passion. And going back to Kelly, I remember it was this hard back and forth. I was like, you know, I'm not going to take it because I don't want to hurt their feelings. But then again, it's like, I worked so hard to get to where I'm at. I have to put myself first. And Kelly called me one night, and she was like, Aicha, like, you, I remember she was like, you worked so hard for this. Like, how are you not going to take this? And that was the first time I've ever put myself first and was like, I'm going to take this position for me. And so that's how I got Good Day. I trained there for 6 months up until October last year. And then they didn't have anything because of the market. So I kept networking and networking. And then they called me back probably a few weeks ago, like, hey, we want you on full time. So that's how I got started.
I love that persistence. I remember when I was researching, I knew Syracuse was a top journalism school. Y'all know, Speedy went to Syracuse.
Yes, Speedy.
Quite a few people who were working at Complex went to Syracuse, so it's a really great program. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about community. And Nessa, you mentioned how, unfortunately, you know, when you were in radio, you didn't get a lot of guidance because people were busy and focused on themselves, you know, and that happens, and that's okay. And you mentioned someone, well, for one, I think a lot of young people, they think, how do I forge relationships with people above me who can help me? Or how important is mentorship? So it's like, what was your approach when you were at Hot 97, wanted guidance, maybe couldn't get it? Did you want to approach people about it? Did you ask them to coffee? Like, what's your advice that you give to folks who are looking for guidance, but sometimes it doesn't just fall in their lap?
That's a great question. I think for me, initially, because my career started in San Francisco on the West Coast. And so by the time I got to Hot 97, I had already been on the radio for 10 years working on my craft. So anytime I decided to spark a conversation with somebody that I knew could give me great insight, I would bring my work to them. And I would want their honest feedback on it. So I'm okay with criticism. I am okay, especially if I respect your opinion and I respect what you've done. I actually want your insight and feedback. So for me, it's always been, I always approach the situation from a humble place. As a student, I'm still a student of the game. So whenever I see somebody that I would like to connect with, I always, you know, present my work first and hear what they have to say. And that's really been the best position in my opinion. I never really seeked out other on-air talent in that way. I mean, when I was growing up, who I listened to, a lot of the women that I listened to on the radio, they were in the Los Angeles area. A lot of unsung heroes that I listened to, like Nautica Dela Cruz or Kool-Aid at that time. So by the time I got of age to begin my career, to begin my internship, they weren't in those positions anymore.
Yeah.
It's harder for women in general, right? Now, and also it's a different market. LA, San Francisco, those are major markets, but still it's different how the landscape shifts versus New York. I mean, if you listen to the radio, you've probably been hearing some of the same people for 20 plus years. So, but with that comes, you have to be prepared, you know, if this is your dream, which it was my dream, the position at Hot 97 Afternoon Drive wasn't open, you know, for 25 years. But when it opened, I had to be ready.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's always presenting my work, getting the feedback from trusted people, but I'm not looking for, it's hard. I wasn't looking for friendship like that, right? I wasn't like, hey, let's go get, you know, a brownie or something. Like, I was just like, hey, I would love your insight and feedback, and what can I do to get better?
Yes.
And most of the time, people are willing to share that
love
feedback.
that.
You know, and hopefully you're willing to receive it. You might not use everything, but it's great to receive that information for sure. And I mean, a pivotal moment, I'll say this really quick, is that early in my career, I worked on the street team, which is basically the marketing department in radio, right? You have to set up all the events. Think of Summer Jam. You're putting up the tent poles. You're saying hello to everybody. No one cares that you're there, right? Like, you're doing like the hard work for events to actually happen. And an opportunity opened up in LA, and, you know, I was gonna turn that down. Another internship. So I was like, it's another internship. So just for an internship, I would commute 12 hours round trip in my car between the Bay Area and LA to do an internship at 2 different radio stations, right? And so so it's from here to probably Buffalo. So I was doing that commute and living out my car for a very long time, or it felt like forever at that time, probably. Now that I look back, I wouldn't do it again right now, but that's because I'm a mom and things are different. But at that time, those opportunities matter. And because I took that internship in Los Angeles while I was in San Francisco, those leaders actually were in connection to Hot 97.
Wow.
They remembered my grind. They remembered my work. They remembered my energy. They remembered who I was. And I was willing to do anything to be on air. I mean, literally, even if that meant sleeping out of my car, just to go live on the radio for 1 minute. It was like, I get to go live for 1 minute? Okay, but I can't be out there. I can't, what am I gonna do? So they remembered that. And that's the only reason, truly, how I got to Hot 97. People remember your grind. And people see your work, whether they are expressing it to you or not. People are always watching. And I may have shared this in one of our classes with Aicha. It's not really about what you do on the clock. It's about what you do off the clock. And you can't worry about who's looking at it. Are you gonna notice my hard work?
Right.
The right people will see it.
Yeah. That's great advice. Even the asking for feedback for your work.
Absolutely.
Because so often I get emails and they're like, hey, can we go to coffee? And it's like, I wish I had time to go to coffee with y'all, but I really don't. But if somebody were to say like, hey, I have a project, can you watch this, and just any feedback?
Yes.
It feels like there's like an actionable thing I can do. So that's great advice. Elyse. So, you know, I'm introverted. So and that's why I think programs like the Lower East Side Girls Club are great, because it just builds community, builds friendship, builds network, and Sad Girls Club. And I just wanted to know from you, you know, what have you learned about the power of community amongst women with running the Sad Girls Club? And if there's even a certain scenario, because I think sometimes if you're shy or you're tired, you know, it's hard to build yourself up to talk to new people. Right. So yeah, what have you learned from just building this organization?
I would say like the general theme is that community is absolutely healing, and it's something that we definitely lose with all of the technology and the apps and things. I'm always like, put your phone down, like let's talk to each other. But one scenario, the first Sad Girls Club event we had, I was broke as hell. I was working at a membership club that doesn't exist anymore, and I was just like grinding because I had this idea. And you know, you get that like feeling. If you're creative, you get that feeling of like, if you haven't written something for a long time, you'll get that feeling that you just want to write, and you can write for hours.
Yeah.
So I had this feeling in my gut, like, this is something that is good. Like, this is something I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it. So the first event, I was like, I want to bring together girls in New York City, and I want to have a therapist there. I want to have good snacks. I want to create a vibe and like create a space for us to talk to each other. This isn't going to be a place where we're just speaking about our depression, but I want to get to know you at your core, where you come from, where your family's from, and then I want to connect us through those things that makes us feel so different. So I hosted this event, and I remember calling a therapist, and she was in Connecticut. Like, I had no idea who she was. I was like, hey, I saw you on Psychology Today. Like, I'm doing this thing. And she's like, I love it. Like, I would love to volunteer. We did the event, and I remember there was one girl, she was 15. The eldest person was probably 30-something, so it was a good group of women. And she came up to me at the end. She was a little bit shy. She's like, please don't let this be like a trend that just comes and goes. Like, my generation needs this real bad. Then I was like, dang, like, I gotta keep doing this. But it showed me, like, even down to like the youngest person in the room, she didn't speak much, but the message was received.
Yes.
So even if you're in community and you don't necessarily want to engage or you don't want to be involved, like just being around people who are like-minded, who see you for who you are. I like to call us like the AA, like the Alcoholics Anonymous of mental health. We're not like your therapist. We're not your best friend. We're that in-between sweet spot that understands who you are, how we can help, how we can support you. And our girls have like started bands together, gone to Disney World, moved across the country together. Like, they are locked in, and I love to see it. And I love that they start their own little like micro Sad Girls clubs wherever they are in the world.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that. That's so cute. And then Aicha, you know, you had the blessing of being involved with the Lower East Side Girls Club, but then you go to Syracuse. It's a big college, right? It's like, how did you find community there? Because I think that's something that these young ladies are going to face once they, you know, leave school and go to college.
Yeah. Well, first it was hard. I will admit. I actually did a summer program because I got into Syracuse with this program called HEOP. So if your parents or family doesn't make enough money, but your grades are like there and your SAT scores are there, they pay for your full tuition, everything, room and board. And you have to come in for the first 2 months to take classes. And so my community started there because I was around people who looked like me, who were in the same situation as me. And till this day, I'm best friends with the group of people I met there. But it wasn't until afterwards where it really hit us, where, you know, it was a predominantly white school, and coming from Girls Club where everyone looks different, it's a big community, it was a culture shock for me. So what I did was, again, like, I found what I love. So I love to sew, I love to do radio, and I love like music. And I joined the ASU, which is the African Student Union. I did the hip hop radio class there. But I remember the first year there was like a bunch of racial incidents that happened over a period of like 2 weeks, and we were protesting that first semester there. And I remember my community came from there because we were all suffering from the same hurt, and we all built a foundation within each other, that community, because at the end of the day, since it's a predominantly white school, our community is really small. And so we had to like find each other and make sure we stay connected. So I will say it was difficult, but I remember when I was protesting, one of the things we negotiated, because I negotiated with the administration, we asked for a house specifically for Black students and people of color. And now that house, it's on Euclid Street, in Syracuse. All the new freshmen and everybody, all the people of color faculty, they go to that building. So I'm happy to say I was part of that community that created a community where now new students can go ahead and just network with each other, make friends there. I mean, they have the ASU groups there. They have, if you're Caribbean, they had the Caribbean groups there, the Dominican Association there. So that's how I found my community. And it also just takes like talking to the person next to you, you know?
Yeah. That's beautiful to have that. Because I know how it feels to go to predominantly white college and to have that safe space. That's amazing that they have that. So Nessa, now you are into your career. You're not
Yes.
entry level.
Yes.
You're experienced and skilled.
Yes.
And you host shows on MTV. You've written a children's book. You have your own nonprofit organization. And this might be a question selfishly for me, but so how are you vetting opportunities that come to you now? You know, I'm sure you're presented with a lot, but you have responsibilities. You just talked about your child, your husband. How are you saying this is for me, this is aligned with what I believe in, et cetera?
I think for me, no matter what stage of my career or really life, I think the first thing I think about when an opportunity arises is, does this align with who I am? If at all it doesn't fall in my line of integrity that falls for me, then I'm not gonna do it. Doesn't matter how big the bag is. I'm okay with that. And I think that's really important. You know, different things move different, people at different times. I'm not judging anybody for what they do, but for myself, first, okay, does this clear my conscience? Does this feel good within my spirit? Okay, we're past, okay, what's next? Okay, how much time am I gonna be away from our daughter? That's a little too much for me, I can't do that, right? Or how, I'm gonna be away from my family for how long? Or maybe there's a compromise. Tonight meant a lot to me. So I made sure to be here today. And it took a lot to get here. My daughter was not happy. I just want you guys to know. Toddler life is real. She's 2.5. But I think for me, I made it a very conscious decision early on in my career that I wanted to focus on my career, commit my life to my career, and then when I wanted to, I would have a family. So by the time that happened, for Colin and I, when we got married, we did it on our own time. And then we decided, well, hey, I mean, we haven't had a baby yet, so we planned for that. So it wasn't until I felt good within my career. And so there is privilege in that, right? I can say no to things. I can say, hey, you know what, hold up, I don't wanna have to do that, or X, Y, Z. My time is so valuable now. But that wasn't till, 16 years, 17 years in my career. So, again, not saying that you can't do it at the same time, have a family while you're on your grind. That was just my journey. I also don't think I can multitask really well, to be honest. Now that I'm a mom and I have a toddler, are you kidding me?
You're probably doing better than you think.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's a lot of work. So, I'm mindful of what I do. If it's not my family, if it's not my career, and if it's not the Know Your Rights camp or girls club, I'm probably not going to make it. I'll do my best. But to your point earlier, which is why if somebody wants insight, just get straight to the point when you email, right? When you hit me, hey, this is my air check. How do I sound? Boom. I respect the pleasantries, but let's get to it, because I'm more than happy to help, and it just sometimes it's timing too, right? Like if I'm looking at my phone and you text me, I'm gonna write back. If I'm not looking at my phone and that baby starts crying, I might not get to you till next year. There's no telling. This is truth. So but most important is, does this align with who I am? It's got to be right. It's got to feel right.
For sure. That's good advice. I love that. Another thing, Elyse, so there's one thing to start something, and there's another thing to sustain it. And it takes a lot of discipline and hard work and persistence. So what do you think has been the one, other than the beautiful thing that you've already said, which is the women wanting young women of color to see someone who looks like them, but what practical, tactical things have helped you sustain SAG Girls Club?
That's a good question. But I would say, honestly, this is our 8th year. The first 4 years, let me give you a background. The second year of SAG Girls Club, I had my baby. And then I was balancing a newborn, SAG Girls Club, baby, and then COVID. Not soon. And then COVID happened. So I had the baby, SAG Girls Club, COVID, and then confusion. Everybody was just locked down. So I was like, my mental was all over the place. But what sustained me, honestly, was being able, so I feel like I was very much a workaholic. Like, I got to get this done by any means. Oh my gosh, the world is falling apart. I got to get this done by any means, by any means. And I found myself crashing out. Like, I crashed out year 4, like, could happily admit it, like, I crashed out and I needed to, because what I was doing, the way I was working was not sustainable. I was saying yes to every opportunity. I was saying yes to things that did not feel like home. And I always tell myself now, if it doesn't feel like home, if it doesn't feel cozy and good and fun and inviting, why am I saying yes to it? But at that time, I had this like scarcity mindset because of what was happening in the world. Although I knew what my vantage point was. I knew what I wanted to do, but I was like, I have to grab onto everything. This partnership doesn't really feel aligned, but like I need the funds. And then I crashed out and I had to really rebuild myself, my mental as a mom, and then my mental as a CEO and as a leader and having a team. I had to really figure out the structure of what Sad Girls Club is and who Elyse is. So I had to go back to the drawing board, and the best version of myself is the Elyse that has 3 vacations a year at least, the Elyse that takes weekends off, the Elyse that doesn't, I have a schedule where I take phone calls on certain days of the week, so I know that I don't have to even like talk to anybody or do my hair. If I want to just wear my bonnet all day, I can wear my bonnet all day and get work done. So I kind of structure my days on how I work and how I flow, because you know, when depression hits, it's hard to maintain that go, go, go mentality, that go, go, go pace that you've set for yourself. And knowing myself and my process, I know I have to like schedule breaks. I know I have to have time with my friends. I know I have to have dinners where do not ask me a thing about work. Like, don't talk about work at all. I want to talk about what's going on TikTok and all these trends or whatever, what's going down. But I think that for me, creating a system for myself in my workflow that works specifically for me, and also reflecting that from my team, Shania from my team, she would tell you like, she might go to the Maldives. I'm like, okay, let me know, just put it in the calendar so I know what time zone you're in. Like I want that for the entire team. So I created this like ecosystem where everyone feels supported and seen, and I don't want people hiding and like not putting their out of office on, like, let me know what you're doing. But I also know that with that, if people have the autonomy to like be truthful and to give and to have that choice, they will work better with you. And I never say people work for me, they work with me, and how can we work with each other together in the best way? So rebuilding my workflow and like doing it in a way that was sustainable to who I am, and that might change season to season, honestly.
I want to work for you. Yeah, schedule vacations. I was just talking about that with a colleague. I need a vacation. Okay. I need a vacation. But I don't have a child, so sometimes I feel, but I do need a vacation. Okay. I do need a vacation. You're right. Okay, Aicha. Okay, so talk about what, Laura? Okay, talk about what was the most surprising thing about college? Because I know that when I was in high school and went to college, it was just like culture shock. So what was the most surprising thing, and how did you adapt, or challenging, or whatever?
That's a good question. There was a lot of challenges, but the most surprising thing was, you know how in high school you have that like support system from like your guidance counselor and all that stuff. I wouldn't say I had that support system on campus. Like I felt like I had to figure it out on my own, which is like getting into new house. Like I thought you needed to network and know somebody to get in. Come to find out, you need a 4.0. And I'm like, I don't have a 4.0. Like, so it just, I don't feel like I had that support, but I also feel like it taught me how to do things on my own. And another shock that came to me was the like amount of work that they assign you, and like you can get into this very like depressive phase because you're being assigned work back to back. It's gloomy out there. There's no sun. You're in a predominantly white school. You're not around your family. You have FOMO. And on top of that, it's like you're trying to get your degree and succeed out of college. And you almost go through this battle like, why did I come to college in the first place? Like, why did I sign up for this? But then again, it's like, I knew that I'm very like, I'm very dependent on myself, but I'm also very much like, what's the word? Like, I like the challenge. So the fact that I was going to a place I knew nothing of, and then on top of that, having to figure it out on my own. I mean, I'm very grateful for that experience, but again, it goes back to what we were talking about finding that community, because it does ease up some of that anxiety and depression. But yeah, I definitely did go through a lot of like emotional phases where I kept it to myself, and I even started therapy in college because it didn't take until like I was so overwhelmed with the work and I got into this phase, and a lot of stuff that happened in my childhood came back up. Like, it was so weird, because it's like, I remember when I was at Hot 97, and I was so scared. Nessa, I don't know if you remember, I was so scared about going to college, because I'm like, I'm scared I'm gonna get distracted. And Nessa was like, well, if you're already having that thought, you're most likely not gonna get yourself distracted. And then, fun fact, Wendy Williams came into the studio that day, and I told her, I was like, I got accepted to Syracuse on a full ride. I'm scared I'm gonna get distracted. She said, oh my God, that's the #1 party school. And I was like, yeah, that's why I'm scared I'm gonna get distracted. She was like, girl, you better party. She was like, you better do your work, but you better party too. She was like, have fun. And so I kept that in the back of my mind, like, I can't be too hard on myself, because I did grow up with a strict family. And my babysitter is here too, Fatima Wave. I grew up with her. She's like my sister. So she's been through my journey this whole time. And I don't know, I think the challenge was just being by myself. Like, I had Kelly, I had Jenny and Erikka, I had Nessa at Hot, and then going there by myself, I'm just like, well, where is everyone? And so I just kind of had to figure it out on my own. That was really just the biggest shock for me, on top of going to like a PWI.
I'm happy you figured things out. No, because it is a transition going from your home to college. Yes. Okay, can we do audience questions? Because I don't want to keep talking if y'all got questions. Any questions from the audience?
Don't be shy.
Oh, go ahead. If you could just say your name.
Hi, I'm Frankie. So I feel like for me, my question is more so like, how do you kind of prioritize your mental health and like not feeling super like down and depressed, but then still also prioritizing work and finding that balance, but more so in like, you know, like how, like scheduling and like just like tips and stuff. And I'm like struggling with that currently. Okay.
I'm going to just share a quick tip, because definitely not my wheelhouse. I probably am, you want to be the opposite of. When I went to college at the University of California, Berkeley, the minute I stepped in, I was doing an internship, and I think that was my entryway. So I'm a poor example, because I've committed my whole life to my career. I actually don't even know balance all the way, but I'm getting better. My child has made me better. So I'm going to pass the microphone over.
I would say start now. Start forming the good habits now, and do it little by little. Like, if you know that some weeks are just going to be heavy, some weeks are going to be annoying, and you have to just get through them. But if you feel like 3 out of 4 weeks out of the month are just too heavy for you, reconstruct your schedule. And like, I feel like a lot of the times we put expectations on ourselves that no one else puts on us, but we also sometimes create our own schedules for ourselves that no one else is expecting us to do. Like, sometimes emails can wait a day. It can wait. You don't have to always be on call. And I know it might make you feel like you're more productive, but if you need to take some time to just like, I need an hour to just actually go on a lunch break and take a walk. I tell my team, like, go on a lunch break. Like, I know you haven't touched grass in a long time. Go out and like do something. But if you feel like you're overwhelmed because your schedule is too packed, you can reconfigure your schedule and have a conversation if you need to speak to like a boss or manager. Like, hey, I will be a better employee. I will have a better workflow if I can do like X, Y, Z, or shift things in this way. Because once you get into that cycle or that rhythm, it is hard to pull yourself back out. And I know for a fact it's so hard to like even speak to other people to help you pull yourself out of that situation. So I do not want that for you. Start forming those like healthy habits. And if you have a manager who's like texting you after hours, I just stop responding. Like, I had a job that was OD, and I was like, I'm just gonna stop responding, and then they'll get it. Like, you have your time that you're at work, but you also have your time that is for you, Frankie. So make sure you use that time wisely, and do not like research or do anything that's work related. Even if your friends are talking about work, like, just change the subject, whatever. But start these habits early, because once you become an adult, it's just it snowballs, and that feels like you're forming your success on how much or how the quantity of your work. But I feel like your quality of life is way more valuable.
I second that. I actually, I'm glad you said that, because when I was in college, I remember with the classes, it felt really overwhelming. But then I always told myself I'm not gonna let my life revolve around my schoolwork, and I'm not gonna let my life revolve around work solely. So I started getting into the habit of like doing meditation in school. Like they had 1-credit classes where I just did meditation because I personally wanted to block out all the classwork and all that stuff. And then outside of college, so now that I work for morning TV, I have to be up super, super early. I'm almost scared to tell y'all the time, but I have to be there at 2 a.m. Oh my. Yeah, so 2 a.m. and then some days it's 4 a.m. And it's a huge difference. I know it sounds crazy, but so if I'm working at 2 a.m., I have to be asleep at like 7, 8. And so like I do my yoga, I do my workout classes, I'll cook, I'll completely block out work. Same thing with the emails. Like if my phone is on do not disturb me. And I tell my bosses that respectfully. I said, listen, like after 12 o'clock, once I'm off the clock, I'm not answering emails. I'm not texting nobody regarding to work unless it's an emergency like today. But other than that, it's like you have to set boundaries outside of work and school. And so my boundaries is like, I'm gonna go work out for an hour, or I'm gonna go take this yoga class on Saturdays, or I'm going to go hang out with some friends. It really just, again, it's like, when it's time to not work, and I seriously just block that out. And then also, like, there are days where I am staying back a little later because I want to work on my reporter reel, and I want to go with the anchor on their reporter shoots. And so those are things that I genuinely like, and so I'll make time for that. But yeah.
That's all great sage advice. Do you have a question? Well, I'll start. What's for you is for you. I think so often we want things and they don't happen, and we're like, you know, this is the end of everything. But what is meant for you is meant for you, and rejection is redirection.
Yes. That's a good one. Yeah. I saw this, actually, it's not gonna take credit. I saw this on TikTok, but this girl was speaking about creation, and she said, the fun is in creation, not the validation. And I had to kind of get out of my head with, because I'm a content creator as well, and you know, when you put things into the world, you just want it to like hit right away. But I'm like, I have the most fun actually doing the actual action. So for me, I'm like, I don't really care what people think about this video or whatever now. I'm just like, I'm gonna put it out into the world, and I'm having fun while I'm doing it.
I think it's a combination. I remember J. Cole having a conversation, and he was just talking about his dreams and his aspirations, and he talked about how he had to be delusional to go after it. And I absolutely 1,000 gazillion % believe this. I believed in myself before anybody else, and I didn't care what anybody else had to say. Again, it was just, I was very clear on what I wanted, and I'm sure it was really annoying to everybody else because, you know, I didn't really have a social life. I dedicated everything to my career, but being extremely delusional about your dreams and just staying on course, for me, I think was very important to hear that, and also to know that I wasn't the only delusional person in the world. There's others. But something else also, just as a reminder, especially for, you know, young girls, and you guys are just doing your thing right now, you're never as great as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are.
Yeah.
Right? And that applies to social media. That applies to your peers. That applies to everything. That applies at work. That applies at school. And I think I wish I would have understood that sooner in my life and just staying right here, right? Never getting too excited from the validation of likes on a post, right? Or getting sad because who didn't like it? Oh, they secretly hate me. I think it's just, hey, people are going to do what they want to do, and you can't allow somebody's clap determine how you're going to feel that day.
Yeah. That's good.
This one was more recent, but you can't control someone else's action. You can only control your reaction. And I say that because when you go off into your career, or when you go off into college or some places, there are going to be experiences where you are tested, and it's so important to control your reactions, and even especially in the business. Like, I'll give you an example. I remember when I started off at Good Day, there was this executive producer, and if you know production and stuff, there's some executive producer who have a certain type of way they want things to be done. And I was very new, and I remember there were so many union rules that I had no idea about. And I remember going to him specifically saying, hey, what can I not do and what can I do? And I remember there was this one time we were in the studio, and I saw someone who was actually new up Girls Club, and so we were catching up, we were networking, and she said, can you take a picture of me? So I went ahead and was going to take a picture of her, and I just feel like a grab on my shoulder, like, what are you doing? You're like, yelled at me in front of everybody in the studio. And I just remember feeling so overwhelmed. It was a male producer, executive producer, and again, I'm new, it's like my first week and a half. And he was so aggressive, so rude. I remember just like bawling, crying in the studio because I was just like so in shock. But I was very angry. I was like, he just touched my shoulder. Like, I need to say something. Like, I just remember like wanting to say something, but I always remember being labeled as the angry Black woman, and so I didn't want to react in a way where I would be labeled as that racist stereotype in a predominantly white production studio. So I just remember I allowed him to do that the first time, and then I remember back to back, it was always something. Like, he said, why aren't you reading your emails? This is in your email. And we went to my email, wasn't even in my email. So it was things like that where he was like picking on me. And I just remember going to one of the anchors and telling him, he was the only Black person there, and I only felt comfortable talking to him. And I would normally go to Girls Club with all of these problems, but I just remember we just came out of that entertainment law firm thing with me switching. So I wanted to figure this out on my own. And I just remember like crying in his office. I was like, listen, this happened to me. Here's 3 instances. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to react in a negative way. Like, what should I do? And fun fact, the producer that I knew at CBS was my connection through Good Day because she knew the news director there. And so the anchor went and told the news director, like, hey, this happened to Aicha. And, he pulled me into his office. He said, listen, I'm happy you told me this. This is not a toxic work environment. I'm glad you didn't react in that negative way. But now I physically have to go to HR and tell them. And so after that, long story short, I just remember a week later, he came into the room and he said, my last day is next week. And so they stood on business. They stood on business for me. And I was scared, but I also was so proud of myself for even speaking up because I typically am like, you know what, I'm just not going to say nothing because, I don't want any conflict. But I just remember like after that, feeling so safe, and I'm so happy I didn't react in that negative way. So that's the best advice I can give to anyone. You can only control your actions and reaction, not the other person.
Yes. We have one more question.
Hi. First of all, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. We've really been looking forward to having you, and this has been like such an inspirational moment for us to be able to share all together. So thank you guys for starters.
Thank you.
I did have a question. Have you guys always known what you wanted to do as like a career, and what advice do you have for young women who may not know the direction that they want to take in life or career-wise? It can be so intimidating as like a young adult.
I always loved music. Music saved my life many times as I was growing up. So I always just knew, okay, some way, somehow I wanted to be in the music industry. And I, don't want your ears to bleed. I can't hold a note. I would try to sing to you all. So I knew I was going to be a failed artist. And so I knew that I wanted to be, involved in conversations between artists and their fans, because I love music just as much as the next fan does. But also I wanted that connection. How are we all feeling? I wanted people to feel good when I shared insight about an artist or, about what's going on. So for me, radio was my pathway. But I grew up watching MTV, TRL, and just being like, this is happening in Times Square? I gotta get there. Are you kidding? Like, what? And so for me, I knew early on I wanted to be in this industry. Thankfully, not an artist. Don't worry. I will not, send you my songs to get played on the radio. But for me, I knew that early on. And so what I did when I went to college, I looked for those internships. And so I found an internship at a radio station. So I was in San Francisco. It's considered Market 4, which is considered a large market in our industry. So I signed up as an intern, and I was so excited. That's another story. But I started through internships the minute I got to college. And I think as you guys explore what's interesting to you, what you're into, there's nothing wrong with exploring different internships and seeing what really resonates with you. If I were to have had access to MTV at that time, I would have done an internship there. If I could have gone to any television, I would have done it. I just knew wherever it was, and I actually think internships are so incredible, and I feel like Girls Club has done a great job helping funnel, everybody into the right space that they want to be in. And again, it's okay if you change your mind. That's the whole point of where you're at right now. And you all have resources and great people to lean on. I mean, truly, when I'm hearing Aicha talk about Kelly and Erikka, and there are great people amongst you, and to lean in on them. And, the OGs, they want to share the insight. They want to give you that game. They want to tell you who they know and who to send your resume to. But definitely use the resources around you.
That was a great answer. I would say I always knew I wanted to tell stories. Like, I'm a filmmaker by trade. Sad Girls Club is just a product of a film that I made. But I grew up with my father recording everything. Like, there's so many home videos. He always had that big box, like, VHS camera. And he just filmed my entire childhood. And I'm so grateful for it. And I realized, like, my first camera was a VHS, like a Sony VHS camera. And I come from the mud. Like, I didn't have a lot of money or resources. So I remember making movies off of, like, my brother's Dell computer. I would, like, make movies and walk around with it and go back home and edit. And I was like, I really enjoy doing this. So if it's something that you enjoy, I don't think you should turn every hobby into a career, not at all. But if you enjoy doing something so much to the point where you're dreaming about it, you're staying up late, you're losing sleep over it, you're studying it. I would study just so many films that I shouldn't have been watching. Like, I was watching Kids way too early. But I realized, like, I really love storytelling. I love telling stories, and I figure out different ways to do that. Like, I also have a column with Teen Vogue. I write. I'm not a huge fan of writing, and I realized that through having my own column. So it's like okay to try something new, even if it's like a big project. But I think if it's something that gets you excited and keeps you up at night, like, pursue it. And like Nessa said, you can always shift, pivot, change your mind, or leave that as a hobby.
Yeah, I obviously didn't think I was gonna go into media because my mom wanted me to be a doctor, but I just remember, like, it wasn't until I went to college and I sat in a biology class, and I kid you not, 5 minutes later, I was like, yeah, this is not for me. Dropped out of the class in front of the professor. I just knew it wasn't for me. I know that sounds crazy, but I literally dropped out the class that day. It just wasn't for me. I knew it. And it goes back to what you said. Like, I remember just dreaming, like, me doing interviews on the red carpet, or me, like, working behind the scenes in a production studio, me meeting all these celebrities. And it's so crazy that I'm in the position that I am now so young, because I always worried, like, well, what if I don't get there? Like, because COVID happened, and then, with the market, it's just everything is changing every day. And so I didn't think, like, I just felt like I always had to work super, super hard. And going back to what Nessa said, like, we had Girls Club and internships. Like, if it wasn't for the support that I had with the internship and at Girls Club, I mean, I don't think I would have been as a confident woman as I am today. Like, they really instilled that in me. And like, even Jenny, I love you so much, Jenny. She watched me. She's right there. She's about to cry, but Jenny actually watched me grow up since I was in the 5th grade. And I remember, like, I used to stress everybody out at Girls Club. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I was like, you know, figuring myself out. I'm not gonna call myself bad, but I was figuring myself out as a child. And I just remember, like, they were always so loving and so supportive. I always say Girls Club is my second home. Like, as much hate and as much as love I didn't feel in the world, I would walk into Girls Club and immediately feel loved. And so I think entering those spaces and having mentors like Kelly, like Nessa, like Jenny, I think those are so important. Like, I have so many mentors in my life that I cherish, and they give me advice, they give me the critiques, and till this day, I'm still connected with them. So I would definitely say, like, continue, like, especially for the girls who are at Girls Club now, continue taking those sewing classes, taking the podcast classes, taking the photography classes that are available to you, and take advantage of it. Because even if you don't know what you want to do now, you may never know if you're like doing a class there and you're just like, oh, I love sewing. Like, I sew my clothes to this day. I love to sew. And I hit up my sewing teacher every time I need an outfit done. Okay. So yeah, I definitely would recommend just staying in those spaces, staying in those community. There's not a lot of places like Sad Girls Club and Girls Club and the internship we did with Nessa. So just take advantage of those moments.
So we are done for the night. I want to thank Nessa. I want to thank Elyse. I want to thank Aicha for all of your beautiful advice. I want to thank the Girls Club. I hope you all found this insightful and helpful, and have a great evening.